My parents forced me to become my dead twin and act as if I never existed, so I showed them just how alive I really am. My twin brother Theo and I were 17 when our intoxicated Uber driver swerved us into the wrong lane going 30 over the speed limit. They both died on impact, and I became cognitively impaired, as well as suffered nerve damage in my legs, losing the ability to walk properly. But that turned out to be the least of my issues. You see, it all started at the hospital. My parents looked at me with disgust, like I wasn't their son who just escaped death. I remember sitting hooked up to machines for 4 days, and they only came once to congratulate me for what I'd done. According to them, I called the Uber. I could have canceled on that driver. Theo's death was my fault. They wouldn't listen to anything else. They discharged me within 7 days, but that 7th day was extra strange. After treating me like a murderer the whole week, they suddenly came in all cheerful. I tried to question why, and their responses about being a happy family again creeped me out. I didn't understand what they were doing at first, but when I came home, everything made sense. My dad wheeled me into Theo's bedroom, where Mom was lining out Theo's old clothes and telling me this was a new beginning. Before I could even comprehend, I heard buzzing behind me. I turned around, but Dad grabbed my head and turned it back. "Stay still, Theo." He then proceeded to cut and gel my hair into the same middle part that Theo wore. I remember starting to cry. It didn't take more than 2 weeks for them to fully see me as Theo. They called me his name, asked me about how my Theo's friends were doing, even put up new family photos, cutting me out of existing ones and leaving only themselves and Theo in frame. All of that was bad, but then they did the unforgivable. They invited Theo's grieving girlfriend Amy over for dinner. She'd been with him for 3 years. They had planned to get married after graduation. At first, Amy thought it was super sweet of my parents. She thought they wanted to help her grieve, but when she saw me as being referred to Theo, she was more than just disturbed. She looked genuinely horrified. I saw her awkwardly speed-running her food so she could get out as soon as possible, but that's when my parents actually started trying to set us up. "Theo, go sit beside your girlfriend, it's rude not to." Amy's face went pale, and I swear I died from embarrassment. "Mom, I'm not the—" "Whatever you say, Theo, honey. Now go get Amy another glass of water, please." I looked at her baffled. Amy excused herself to the bathroom, and as soon as she was out of view, I heard her just bolt out of the house. I thought this was good. Maybe it would open my parents' eyes a little, but nope, it made them even worse. The next morning, Dad pulled me out of my wheelchair by force. I remember falling to the floor as he yelled at me, "Theo doesn't have leg problems. If you weren't in this stupid wheelchair, Amy would have stayed last night." I couldn't believe it. He was blaming me for her leaving. Even worse, Mom soon found my hidden stash of painkillers, and she flushed them down the toilet, telling me that her Theo was never a substance addict. I cried so hard I begged them to listen. I was grieving too, but they didn't. They left me alone on the floor, and then it happened. 10 minutes later, I heard, "Theo, honey, come downstairs. Breakfast is ready." That's what broke me. I officially gave up, and for the next few months, I was Theo. I wore his clothes. I answered to his name. I started drawing for fun like he used to. But then something happened. I got a message from Amy. She was asking if I was okay. She hadn't stopped thinking about that dinner in months, and said she couldn't help but feel I wasn't right. That awakened something. I responded and told her the truth, and very soon, she was asking me to meet up. We caught up at the park that night, and for the first time ever since it happened, I felt like myself. We talked about grief, about everything. She encouraged me to regain my identity again, to relearn guitar like I loved to. Before I knew it, I was dragging myself to the basement and found my old guitar. My hands were clumsy now, and my brain couldn't quite connect it, but it was something. On the 6-month anniversary, my parents left to inquire about legal name changes. Amy took the opportunity to come over, and we played guitar together and cried about the real Theo. But of course, things didn't go well. My parents came home early and found us together. But instead of being angry, Mom started gushing about how happy she was that Theo and Amy were back together, while Dad asked since when Theo played guitar. Something in me finally snapped. "I'm not Theo," I screamed. "I'm Eric." The fight that followed was explosive. My parents accused me of seducing my brother's girlfriend and being mentally ill, while Amy defended me. They kicked her out of the house by force and sent me up to my Theo's room. But for the first time, I didn't go. I locked myself in my room and didn't come out. My dad banged on the door demanding I go to Theo's room, but I refused. Unfortunately, things got worse that night. Much worse. My parents picked the bedroom lock and they went through my phone. They blocked Amy on everything and deleted her number. They then took my guitar and smashed it in the backyard. But that was just the start, because the next morning, I woke up to the ambulance outside our house. I hurried downstairs, and that's when I saw it. My mother had tried to take her own life. She was getting carried away on a stretcher, and the medics were saying she's gonna need a miracle to survive. My dad was sobbing, calling me Eric, hugging me and begging me to tell him it's gonna be okay. I stood there frozen, watching the paramedics load the stretcher into the ambulance. My father's grip on my shoulders tightened as he shook me slightly, his tears falling onto my shirt. The neighbors had started gathering on their lawns, whispering and pointing at our house. "Get in the ambulance," Dad commanded, his voice cracking as he pushed me toward the vehicle. "She needs to see you're here." The paramedic helped me climb in, my legs barely cooperating as I struggled with a high step. Inside, machines beeped frantically while 2 EMTs worked over my mother's still form. Her face looked gray, her lips tinged blue. One paramedic glanced at me and gestured to a small seat. "Stay there and hold on tight," she instructed, returning her attention to inserting an IV. Dad climbed in after me, immediately gripping my wrist so hard it hurt. He leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. "Tell her you're sorry for what you did to us," he whispered, his fingers digging deeper into my skin. The ambulance lurched forward, sirens wailing. I watched my mother's chest rise and fall with the rhythm of the ventilator. Suddenly, her eyes fluttered open, focusing directly on me. The hatred in them made my stomach drop. Her gaze held mine for 3 seconds before rolling back, her body going limp again. "She's crashing!" one paramedic shouted, beginning chest compressions. At the hospital, they rushed her through double doors while we were directed to a waiting area. Through the small windows, I could see doctors and nurses swarming around her gurney. Dad paced back and forth, alternating between calling me Eric and Theo in the same breath. "Eric, why did you—" "No, Theo would never." "Eric, you destroyed everything." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his face darkened. He shoved the screen in front of me. A text from Amy read, "I know what happened. On my way." "You did this," he hissed. "She's coming because you seduced her, because you couldn't just be who we needed you to be." 20 minutes later, Amy burst through the emergency room doors, her eyes red from crying. She spotted us immediately and started toward me, but Dad stepped between us, blocking her path. "You need to leave," he said coldly. "This is a family matter. Eric needs support right now," Amy protested, trying to move around him. Dad grabbed her arm. "His name is Theo. Let go of me." Amy yanked free, raising her voice. "Check his phone history. They've been deleting my messages for months." The commotion drew the attention of hospital security. Two guards approached, hands on their radios. "Is there a problem here?" the larger one asked. Dad immediately switched to his concerned parent voice. "This young woman has been stalking my deceased son's identity through my other son. He's confused and vulnerable after the accident, and she's taking advantage." Amy's jaw dropped. "That's not true. Tell them, Eric." I opened my mouth, but the words tangled in my brain. The cognitive damage made it hard to form sentences when I was stressed. I gestured frantically, trying to explain, but only managed to stutter out fragments. I'm not. Amy knows. "See?" Dad said to security. "He can barely communicate. She's been confusing him, making him think he's someone he's not." Security exchanged glances. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us," one said to Amy. "This is insane." Amy pulled out her phone. "I'm recording this. Eric is being abused. Ma'am, please come with us to the security office. We need to sort this out." They led all three of us down a hallway to a small office. The security supervisor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, gestured for us to sit. "Let's all calm down and explain what's happening," she said. Dad launched into his version immediately. "My son Theo, this is Theo, has been struggling since his twin brother died in an accident. This girl was dating the deceased twin and won't accept that he's gone. She's been manipulating my surviving son." I tried again to speak, lifting my arms to gesture. My sleeve rode up, revealing purple bruises from where Dad had grabbed me earlier. The security supervisor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Sir, how did your son get those bruises?" Dad didn't miss a hit. "He falls frequently due to his injuries. We do our best to catch him, but sometimes we grab too hard trying to help." Amy leaned forward. "Those are fingerprint bruises. Eric, show them your other arm." I started to comply, but Dad's hand clamped down on my shoulder. "Theo gets confused. The trauma from losing his brother." "Stop calling him Theo," Amy shouted. The supervisor held up a hand. "Young man, can you tell me your name?" I concentrated hard, forcing my mouth to work. Eric. He thinks he's his dead brother sometimes," Dad said quickly. "The doctor said it's survivor's guilt manifesting as identity confusion." The supervisor studied us all carefully. "I think it's best if we let the family handle this privately." "Ma'am," she addressed Amy, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. If you return, we'll contact the police." Amy stood up slowly, her phone still recording. "Eric, I'm not giving up on you," she said directly to me. "I'll find a way to help." Dad stood too, positioning himself between us. "If you contact my son again, I'll file harassment charges. He needs to heal without your interference." Security escorted Amy out while Dad gripped my arm, guiding me back to the ER waiting room. Through the window, I saw Amy in the parking lot, talking rapidly on her phone while looking back at the building. "She's going to cause more problems," Dad muttered. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. "Sarah? It's me. There's been an accident." "No, your sister. She tried to." "Yes, we're at the hospital now." He walked a few feet away, but I could still hear him giving different versions of events to each relative he called. To some, Mom had accidentally taken too many pills. To others, she'd had a breakdown over Theo's death. Each story painted him as the devoted husband and me as the troubled son who'd driven her to it. A doctor emerged from the ER. "Family of Patricia Morrison?" Dad rushed over, dragging me with him. "How is she? Is my wife okay?" "She's stable for now, but critical. We've moved her to the ICU. The next 24 hours will be crucial." The doctor glanced at me. "Is this your son?" "Yes, this is Theo," Dad said firmly. The doctor frowned slightly but didn't comment. "You can see her briefly, one at a time." Dad went first, leaving me in the waiting room. I slumped in the uncomfortable plastic chair, my legs throbbing without my pain medication. Through the window, I watched the parking lot, hoping to see Amy's car return. When Dad came back, his eyes were red. "Your turn, Theo. Tell your mother you love her." I dragged myself down the hallway to the ICU. Mom lay surrounded by machines, tubes running everywhere. Her chest rose and fell mechanically. I stood there, unsure what to say to someone who'd tried to erase me. A nurse touched my shoulder gently. "You can talk to her. Sometimes they can hear." I leaned closer. "Mom, it's Eric, your son Eric." Her eyes snapped open, focusing on me with that same hatred. Her hand twitched toward me, fingers clawing at the air. The monitors started beeping faster. "I think you should go," the nurse said quickly, checking the machines. Back in the waiting room, Dad was on the phone with someone else. "Yes, we'll need to make arrangements." "No, Theo is handling it well." "Yes, just like his brother would have wanted." Hours passed. Dad finally decided we should go home, promising to return in the morning. The drive was silent except for his occasional muttering about Amy and her interference. At home, he guided me straight to the kitchen, sitting me in Theo's usual chair. "We need to maintain normalcy," he said. "Your mother would want that." He heated up leftover casserole, placing it in front of me. I picked at it, my appetite gone. Dad sat across from me, staring intently. "Tomorrow, we'll deal with the Amy situation properly," he said. "But tonight, you need to remember who you are. You're Theo. You've always been Theo." I pushed the plate away. "Dad, don't." His voice was sharp. "Not tonight. Your mother is fighting for her life because you couldn't just be what we needed." He stood abruptly, grabbing my plate and dumping it in the sink. "Go to your room. Theo's room." I pulled myself up using the table, my legs shaking. As I passed the living room, I noticed something different. The family photos had been rearranged again. Now there were duplicates of Theo everywhere, some clearly photoshopped to show him at different ages he'd never reached. I made my way upstairs, each step sending shooting pains through my damaged nerves. The photoshopped images seemed to watch me climb. Theo's face multiplied and aged into futures he'd never see. My bedroom door stood open, the lock mechanism completely removed from the frame. Fresh tool marks scarred the wood where Dad had worked. Inside, more changes awaited. My remaining clothes had vanished from the closet, replaced entirely with Theo's wardrobe. The walls displayed his artwork, his trophies, his life. Even the sheets had been changed to his favorite navy blue set. I collapsed onto the bed, exhausted and defeated. The house settled into an uneasy quiet. Through the thin walls, I heard Dad moving around his bedroom, drawers opening and closing. Then footsteps on the stairs, deliberate and heavy. He appeared in my doorway holding a med bottle. "Your mother's sleeping pills," he said, shaking them. "The doctor prescribed these after Theo died. She couldn't sleep, kept having having nightmares about the accident. He set the bottle on the nightstand. Maybe they'll help you rest, help you think more clearly. The implication hung between us. Take the pills voluntarily, or he'd find another way. I reached for the bottle with trembling fingers, pretending to take one while palming it instead. Dad watched until I swallowed, then nodded with satisfaction. Good night, Theo. Tomorrow will be better. He pulled the door closed. I heard him dragging something heavy across the hallway bookshelf, repositioning it against my door. Not locked in, but definitely blocked. I spit the med into my hand and hid it inside the pillowcase. My phone was gone, of course. The landline in Theo's room had been disconnected months ago. I lay in the darkness, listening to the house and planning. Amy was out there, trying to help. Mrs. Chen next door had noticed things. People knew something was wrong. I just had to survive until someone could act. Around 3 a.m., I woke to sounds from downstairs. Dad's voice, low and urgent on the phone. I pressed my ear to the floor, catching fragments. Need to move quickly. Yes, the papers are ready. She's still unconscious, but I understand the risks. Footsteps on the stairs sent me scrambling back to bed. The bookshelf scraped aside, and Dad peered in, checking I was asleep. I forced my breathing to stay deep, and even until he retreated. Morning came too soon. Dad appeared with breakfast and more pills, watching me take them. This time I couldn't fake it. He checked under my tongue, made me drink a full glass of water. The medication made everything fuzzy, but not enough to miss what came next. Get dressed, he ordered, laying out clothes. We're going to see your mother, then we have appointments. The clothes were Theo's nicest outfit, the one he'd worn to junior prom. I struggled into them while Dad watched, adjusting the collar, smoothing the sleeves. He produced Theo's watch, fastening it around my wrist with reverent care. Perfect, he murmured, just perfect. The drive to the hospital passed in a medicated haze. Dad kept up a steady stream of conversation, addressing me only as Theo, reminding me of our memories, how we had learned to ride bikes together, how proud we were when Mom got her promotion, how we had always been the perfect family. At the ICU, Mom remained unconscious but stable. Dad spoke to her as if she could hear, telling her how well Theo was doing, how he was finally accepting who he was meant to be. The nurses exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing. We have to go, Dad announced after 15 minutes. Theo has an appointment with Dr. Catherine. I didn't know any Dr. Catherine. Dad guided me through unfamiliar hospital corridors to a different wing entirely, the psychiatric ward. My blood ran cold as we checked in at a secured desk. Dr. Catherine turned out to be a thin woman with sharp eyes who specialized in identity disorders. Dad had already briefed her extensively, apparently. She addressed me as Theo from the start, asking about my memories, my feelings about losing Eric. I tried to correct her, to explain, but the words came out jumbled. The medication, combined with my cognitive issues, made complex thoughts nearly impossible to articulate. Dad sat beside me, occasionally translating my attempts at speech. He's been confused since the accident, Dad explained smoothly. Sometimes he thinks he's Eric. It's a coping mechanism, the previous doctors said. Survivor's guilt manifesting as identity replacement. Dr. Catherine took notes, nodding sympathetically. It's not uncommon in twin loss, she said. The surviving twin may feel they need to become both people to keep their sibling alive. I'm not. I struggled to form the words. It's okay, Theo, she said gently. We're going to help you work through this confusion. Your father has arranged for regular sessions. The appointment lasted an hour. By the end, I realized with growing horror that Dad had found the perfect professional ally. Dr. Catherine genuinely believed she was treating a grieving twin with identity confusion. Every protest I made only reinforced her diagnosis. Back in the car, Dad smiled with satisfaction. She's very good. Came highly recommended. 3 sessions a week to start, then we'll see. We stopped at a legal office next. Dad left me in the car, windows cracked like I was a dog. Through the windshield, I watched him signing papers, shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit. When he returned, he was carrying a folder. Just some paperwork, he said casually. Nothing for you to worry about, Theo. The next stop was even worse. The DMV. Dad presented paperwork to change my ID. The clerk looked confused, checking computer records. I show Eric Morrison at this address, not Theo, she said. There's been a terrible mix-up since the accident, Dad explained, sliding over official-looking documents. My son Theo survived, not Eric. The hospital made an error in their initial reports. We've been trying to correct it everywhere. The clerk examined the papers, death certificate amendments, doctor's notes, legal affidavits, all declaring that Theo Morrison had survived the accident, not Eric. My hands shook as I tried to speak up, but Dad's grip on my shoulder was iron. He's still recovering, Dad said apologetically. The trauma makes it hard for him to communicate. They took my photo, printed a new ID. Theo Morrison, it read. Eric Morrison was officially dead. The drive home was silent. I stared at the ID card in my hands, at my face labeled with my dead brother's name. Dad hummed contentedly, satisfied with the morning's work. At home, I found more changes. Workers were installing something on my bedroom windows. Decorative bars, Dad explained, for aesthetic purposes. They looked exactly like the security bars I'd seen on ground floor windows in bad neighborhoods, just to match the historical character of the house, Dad said smoothly. Mrs. Chen was in her yard, watching the installation with obvious concern. She caught my eye and mouthed something I couldn't make out. Dad noticed and stepped between us, waving cheerfully. Afternoon, Mrs. Chen. Just some home improvements. She didn't wave back. Inside, Dad showed me the schedule he'd created. Doctor appointments, therapy sessions, family time. Every moment of my day planned and accounted for. No mention of school. Apparently Theo was taking a gap year to process his grief. We'll get through this together, Dad said, pinning the schedule to the refrigerator. You'll see. Soon you won't even remember wanting to be anyone else. The pills made the afternoon blur together. Dad had me practice Theo's signature over and over until my hand cramped. He played old videos of Theo, pointing out mannerisms I should adopt. When I dozed off, he woke me to take more medication. Dinner was Theo's favorite meal. Dad had even bought the same brand of soda Theo preferred. He watched every bite I took, correcting how I held my fork, reminding me that Theo was left-handed for eating, remember? I wasn't, but I struggled to adapt, dropping food, fumbling with utensils. Dad's patience wore thin. You're not trying, he accused. Theo would try harder. After dinner, he had me sit in the living room while he called relatives. Each conversation was a performance, him describing how well Theo was doing, how therapy was helping, how grateful they were for everyone's support. I sat silent, forbidden to speak, the pills making everything feel distant and unreal. The doorbell rang around 8. Dad frowned, not expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw 2 police officers. His face went carefully neutral. "Officers," he said, opening the door partway. "Can I help you?" "We're following up on a welfare check request," the older officer said. "We need to speak with Eric Morrison." "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," Dad said smoothly. "Eric died in a car accident 7 months ago. I'm here with my surviving son, Theo." The officers exchanged glances. "Sir, we have conflicting reports. We need to see your son." Dad hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course, Theo's right here. He's been struggling with some confusion since the accident. Survivor's guilt. His doctor says it's quite common." The officers entered, studying me intently. The younger one looked familiar. He'd been here before, during the welfare check. His eyes narrowed at my appearance. "Son, can you tell us your name?" the older officer asked. I opened my mouth, fighting through the medication fog. Dad's hand landed on my shoulder, squeezing in warning. I started, then forced out, "Eric, I'm Eric." "He's confused," Dad interjected quickly. "His psychiatrist, Dr. Catherine, can explain. I have her card right here." He produced it from his wallet. "She's treating him for identity confusion following his twin's death." The officers took the card, but the younger one kept watching me. "Those bars on the bedroom windows, those new?" "Just installed today," Dad confirmed. "Decorative. Theo's been having nightmares, sleepwalking. It's for his safety." "Can we speak to him privately?" the older officer asked. Dad's grip tightened. "I'd prefer to stay. He gets agitated when he's confused. Last time he hurt himself." But the officers insisted. Dad reluctantly moved to the kitchen, though I could feel him hovering just out of sight. The younger officer sat across from me, voice low. "I remember you from before," he said quietly. "You looked different, healthier. What's happening here?" I tried to explain, but the words tangled. The pills, the confusion, the constant correction. It all jumbled together. I managed to get out fragments about the ID change, the doctor visits, the medication. "Are you taking medication voluntarily?" he asked. I shook my head, then nodded, then shook it again. It was complicated. Dad didn't force them down my throat, but refusing wasn't really an option either. The officer made notes. "Has anyone hurt you physically?" I started to show the bruises, but Dad reappeared. "Officers, I think this is upsetting him. As you can see, he's well cared for. Fed, clothed, receiving medical attention. His mother is in the ICU. We're all under tremendous stress." "What happened to his mother?" the older officer asked. Dad's face crumpled with practiced grief. She tried to hurt herself. The loss of Eric, it was too much. That's why I'm being so careful with Theo. I can't lose anyone else." The story was perfect. Grieving father, traumatized surviving son, family destroyed by tragedy. The officers softened visibly. They asked a few more questions, took some notes, and prepared to leave. "If you need anything," the younger officer said to me directly, "you can always call." But we all knew I couldn't. No phone, no privacy, no way to reach out. They left their cards anyway, Dad immediately pocketing them after closing the door. "That was unfortunate," he said coldly. "Amy's doing, I assume. We'll have to be more careful." He increased my medication that night. I fought to stay conscious, knowing that every day I lost more of myself. Through my window, I could see Mrs. Chen's house. Her living room light stayed on unusually late, and I wondered if she was watching, waiting, planning something. The next morning came with new challenges. Dad woke me early for therapy with Dr. Catherine. I could barely walk, over-medicated and exhausted. He had to practically carry me to the car. "You need to do better today," he warned. "Show her you're making progress accepting who you are." But I couldn't. In the session, I fought to assert my identity, slurring out Eric every time she called me Theo. Dr. Catherine took careful notes, occasionally glancing at Dad with concern. "He seems more resistant today," she observed. "Has anything changed?" "The police came by last night," Dad admitted. "Someone made a false welfare check request. It agitated him, brought back the confusion." "I see." She adjusted her glasses. "Theo, do you understand why people are worried about you?" "Not Theo," I managed. "This level of resistance is concerning," she told Dad. "We might need to consider a more intensive treatment approach. There's an excellent inpatient program that specializes in identity disorders." Dad leaned forward with interest. "Inpatient? A few weeks of structured environment, proper medication management, intensive therapy. It could help break through this fixation on being Eric." They discussed me like I wasn't there, planning my erasure in clinical terms. I tried to protest, but my words came out as meaningless sounds. The medication was winning. After the appointment, Dad drove to a pharmacy. Not our usual one. This was across town. He went in alone, returning with more bottles. Different pills, different colors. "Doctor, Catherine adjusted your prescriptions," he explained. "These should help with the confusion." At home, I found Amy's car parked down the street. Dad saw it too, his jaw tightening. He hurried me inside, double-locking the door. Within minutes, his phone rang. "No, she can't see him. I don't care what she claims. Harassment. Yes, I'll file charges." Through the living room window, I watched Amy arguing with someone on her phone. She looked up, saw me, and waved frantically. I raised my hand slightly before Dad yanked me away from the window. "You don't communicate with her," he snarled. "She's poison. She's the reason you're confused." He made me take the new pills immediately. These were different, stronger. Within an hour, I could barely keep my eyes open. Dad settled me on the couch, turning on videos of Theo. His voice, his laugh, his movements playing on repeat while I drifted in and out of consciousness. "Watch and learn," Dad instructed. "Remember who you are." The doorbell rang again. Through my haze, I heard Dad arguing with someone. Amy's mother's voice, threatening legal action. Dad's calm responses about harassment, restraining orders, medical privacy. The door closing firmly. Time became elastic. Hours or minutes passed between blinks. Dad fed me soup at some point, more pills, water. The videos kept playing. Theo at birthday parties, Theo at school events, Theo alive and laughing and being everything I was supposed to become. Night fell. Dad helped me upstairs, my legs barely functioning. The bedroom bars cast prison shadows on the walls. He tucked me in like a child, smoothing the covers, adjusting the pillow. "Tomorrow we're seeing a specialist about the inpatient program," he said. "It's for the best, Theo. You'll see." He left the door open. No point in closing it with the bookshelf back in place. I lay there, fighting the medication, trying to think. Inpatient meant locked wards, no visitors, complete control. I'd disappear entirely. Through the fog, I heard something, a soft tapping. It took enormous effort to turn my head. Mrs. Chen stood at my barred window, holding up a piece of paper. "Blink if you need help," it read. I blinked frantically. She nodded, holding up another sign. "Tomorrow, be ready." She disappeared before I could process what that meant. Be ready for what? How could I be ready for anything when I could barely move? Sleep pulled me under. under, but not before I heard Dad on the phone again, making arrangements. Yes, tomorrow afternoon. Evaluation and possible admission. I have all the documentation. Morning arrived with Dad already dressed and organized. He'd packed a bag, just in case the evaluation leads to immediate admission. Theo's clothes, Theo's toiletries, Theo's life packed neatly away. Take your pills, he ordered, watching me swallow each one. We want you calm for the doctors. But something was different about these pills. The colors were right, but they felt different in my mouth. Lighter, maybe? I swallowed them anyway, had no choice with Dad watching. We ate breakfast in silence. Dad checked his watch repeatedly, anxious about timing. The facility was 2 hours away, he explained. We needed to leave soon. Use the bathroom, he instructed. It's a long drive. I complied, moving slowly. But in the bathroom, I realized the pills weren't hitting like usual. My head felt clearer, not worse. Had something happened to them? Back in the kitchen, Dad was loading my bag into the car. Through the window, I saw Mrs. Chen in her garden watching. She gave a tiny nod when our eyes met. Time to go, Dad announced, returning for me. This is a good thing, Theo. You'll get the help you need. He guided me to the car, hand firm on my elbow. I moved slowly, playing up the medication effects I should have been feeling. As we reached the driveway, everything happened at once. Amy's car screeched around the corner. Mrs. Chen emerged from her house with 2 other neighbors. An unfamiliar van pulled up behind Dad's car, blocking it in. What the hell? Dad's grip tightened painfully. Amy jumped out, followed by her mother and a woman in professional clothes holding a clipboard. The neighbors formed a loose circle, phones out and recording. Mr. Morrison, the professional woman called out. I'm Victoria Peters from Adult Protective Services. We need to speak with you about Eric. His name is Theo, Dad said automatically, trying to pull me toward the car. But the van blocked our path. We have documentation suggesting otherwise, Victoria continued, approaching slowly, including affidavits from neighbors about concerning behavior. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. I replaced his pills last night, she announced, with vitamins. I've been watching this family for months, documenting everything. Dad's face went white, then red. You broke into my house? That's illegal. So is false imprisonment and identity theft, Amy's mother countered. We have Eric's original birth certificate, his medical records, everything proving who he really is. Dad yanked me harder, trying to retreat to the house, but more neighbors had gathered, blocking that path too. We were surrounded by witnesses. This is kidnapping, Dad shouted. I'm calling the police. Please do, Victoria said calmly. We've already notified them about the situation. They're on their way. I felt Dad's control slipping. His carefully constructed reality was crumbling under the weight of prepared intervention. These people had planned this, coordinated it. The pills, the timing, the witnesses, everything designed to catch him in the act of taking me away. Eric, Amy called out, tell us your name, your real name. Dad's hand clamped over my mouth, but I twisted away. For the first time in months, my head was clear enough to speak. My name is Eric Morrison, I said loudly. This man has been forcing me to pretend to be my dead brother Theo. The words broke something in Dad. He shoved me away, hard enough that I fell onto the driveway. Amy rushed forward while he retreated, pointing at all of us. You don't understand, he screamed. I was saving him! Eric unalived Theo! He deserved to die instead. Victoria was already on her phone, updating the incoming police. The neighbors kept recording. Mrs. Chen knelt beside me, checking for injuries. I've been watching since that dinner with Amy, she said quietly. Your mother told me weeks ago what was happening, asked me to watch out for you. I'm sorry it took so long to act. Dad had reached the house, slamming the door. Through the windows, we could see him moving frantically, probably destroying evidence. It didn't matter. Too many people had seen too much. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Amy held my hand while her mother spoke with Victoria about emergency custody arrangements. The neighbors maintained their vigil, ensuring Dad couldn't escape out the back. It's over, Amy whispered. You're safe now. But I knew it wasn't that simple. There would be questions, investigations, legal battles. Dad had documents declaring me dead, doctors who believed I was Theo. The truth would take time to untangle. The police arrived in force, 3 cars, lights flashing. They established a perimeter while one officer approached with a megaphone, calling for Dad to exit peacefully. Victoria briefed them on the situation while paramedics checked me over. We need to take you for evaluation, one paramedic said gently. Standard procedure after medication tampering and potential abuse. I nodded, exhausted but clear-headed. As they helped me onto a gurney, I saw movement in the house. Dad appeared at an upstairs window, my bedroom window. He'd removed one of the decorative bars and was trying to squeeze through. He's attempting to exit the 2nd floor, an officer radioed. Dad made it halfway out before getting stuck. He dangled there, screaming about his rights, about Theo, about the injustice of it all. It would have been comedic if it wasn't so pathetic. They got him down eventually, in handcuffs, still insisting I was Theo. As the police car pulled away with him inside, I felt something release in my chest. The performance was over. I could stop pretending to be dead. We'll follow you to the hospital, Amy promised as the ambulance doors closed. The ride was different this time. No one demanding I apologize, no one insisting on false names, just concerned professionals using my real name, asking about my real medical history, treating me like I existed. At the hospital, the evaluation was thorough but gentle. They documented injuries, took blood samples to identify the medications in my system, conducted cognitive assessments. A social worker sat with me through it all, explaining each step. The pills your father was giving you, the doctor explained later, were a cocktail of psychiatric medications, antipsychotics, sedatives, mood stabilizers. No wonder you struggled to communicate. They wanted to keep me for observation, to safely manage withdrawal from the medications. I agreed, too tired to protest. Amy and her family were in the waiting room, along with Victoria from APS. Your Aunt Sarah is flying in, Victoria informed me. She's petitioned for emergency custody. Given the circumstances, it should be approved quickly. I thought about Aunt Sarah, who'd tried to help, who'd seen through Dad's act. Maybe with her, I could start rebuilding who Eric Morrison was supposed to be. That night, in a hospital bed with my real name on the chart, I slept without pills for the first time in months. No videos of Theo playing on repeat. No one insisting I was someone else. Just silence and the slow return of myself. The news would spread quickly through our town. The story was too strange, too horrible to keep quiet, but that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I was Eric Morrison, alive and recognized, and that was enough. The withdrawal hit me harder than expected. By the second day, my hands shook uncontrollably, and sweat soaked through the hospital gowns. The nurses checked on me hourly, daily, adjusting IV fluids and monitoring vitals. Through it all, Amy stayed in the visitor's chair, only leaving when forced by visiting hours. On day 3, Aunt Sarah arrived. She took one look at me and burst into tears, pulling me into a careful hug that avoided my IV lines. She smelled like her house, vanilla candles and fresh laundry, normal things, safe things. I tried calling so many times, she whispered. Your father always had excuses why you couldn't talk. The social worker arrived with paperwork, emergency custody forms, medical authorizations, insurance documents. Aunt Sarah signed everything while I watched, my signature still too shaky to be legal. The social worker explained the next steps: police interviews, psychological evaluations, potential criminal charges against Dad. The district attorney wants to meet with you when you're stronger, she said. Your father is being held without bail. The identity theft charges alone are serious. 2 detectives came that afternoon. They brought photos of the house, evidence bags containing the fake documents Dad had created. They asked careful questions, recording everything while Amy held my hand. I showed them the scars from where Dad had grabbed me, the places my hair was still growing back wrong from his styling attempts. We found journals, one detective said. Your father documented his plans. It goes back months before your mother's attempt. The psychiatrist assigned to my case was nothing like Dr. Catherine. Dr. Nathans actually listened when I spoke. He didn't call me Theo, didn't try to convince me I was confused. Instead, he helped me understand how trauma and medication had affected my brain. The cognitive impairment from the accident made you vulnerable, he explained. Your father exploited that vulnerability. None of this was your fault. Mom woke up on day 4. The ICU called to inform us, but warned she was still fragile. Aunt Sarah went first, returning with red eyes and shaking hands. She's asking for you, she told me. She knows who you are. She called you Eric. The walk to the ICU felt endless. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, swallowed by machines and blankets. Her eyes found mine immediately, filling with tears. Eric, she whispered. My Eric, I'm so sorry. I sat carefully on the edge of her bed. She reached for my hand with trembling fingers, her grip barely there but real. I tried to stop him, she said. The note, I wanted you to know. Mrs. Chen told me, I said, about asking her to watch out for me. Mom nodded weakly. I was too weak, too scared, but I never forgot who you were. The nurses limited our visit, but Mom squeezed my hand before I left. You're Eric, she repeated. Always Eric. Back in my room, more people arrived. The principal from my old school came with cards from classmates. Some of Theo's real friends showed up, awkward but genuine in their concern. They told stories about the real Theo, helping me separate my brother from the performance I'd been forced to give. Mrs. Chen visited with homemade soup and a thick folder. Evidence, she said, patting it. Every incident I witnessed, every scream I heard, every time I saw you trying to signal for help. The folder contained dated photos, detailed notes, even audio recordings from her phone. She'd been building a case for months, waiting for the right moment to act. Your mother came to me 2 weeks before her attempt, Mrs. Chen revealed. She was planning to leave, to take you somewhere safe. But then, physical therapy started on day 5. My legs had weakened further from the medications and confinement. The therapist brought a walker, teaching me exercises to rebuild strength. Amy attended every session, cheering for small victories like standing unassisted for 30 seconds. The police returned with updates. They'd found more evidence at the house. Hidden cameras in my room, recordings of Dad coaching me to be Theo, medical records he'd falsified. The identity theft went deeper than anyone realized. He'd been slowly transferring my assets, my social security benefits from the accident, everything into accounts under Theo's name. He was planning to have you committed permanently, the detective explained. We found correspondence with a private facility that specializes in long-term psychiatric holds. Aunt Sarah handled the legal complexities while I focused on recovery. She hired a lawyer to untangle the identity theft, restore my legal existence, recover the stolen funds. The lawyer visited daily with updates and documents requiring my slowly steadying signature. Dr. Martinez from the original accident came by, horrified at what had happened. He ordered new cognitive tests, comparing them to my baseline from after the accident. The medications your father gave you actually worsened your cognitive function, he said. With proper therapy, you should recover most of what you lost. Group therapy started in week 2. Other survivors of family abuse, sharing stories that made mine feel less impossibly strange. The therapist specialized in identity abuse, a term I hadn't known existed. What your father did has a name, she explained. Imposed identity. It's a form of psychological abuse where the victim is forced to become someone else. Mom was transferred to the psychiatric ward for her own recovery. We had joint sessions twice a week, working through the tangled mess of grief and guilt and survival. She told me about the night before her attempt, how Dad had shown her the legal papers declaring me dead. I couldn't pretend anymore, she said. Seeing your name on a death certificate, I broke. The criminal case built steadily. Dad's lawyer pushed for an insanity defense, claiming grief had driven him to believe I really was Theo. But the evidence showed too much planning, too much deliberate action. The prosecutor was confident about conviction. Amy started visiting during school hours, bringing homework and gossip and normal teenage things. She helped me relearn guitar with my damaged hands, celebrating when I managed a full chord progression without fumbling. The real Theo would be so angry, she said one day, about what your dad did, using his memory like that. Aunt Sarah found a rental house near her own, close enough for support, but separate enough for independence. She took me shopping for clothes, my own clothes, chosen by me, nothing that had ever belonged to Theo. The simple act of picking out a shirt felt revolutionary. The insurance company finally approved a new wheelchair, properly fitted to my current needs. The physical therapist taught me to navigate with it, to build upper body strength while my legs continued healing. Small victories accumulated, transferring independently, managing stairs with minimal help, standing long enough to make a sandwich. Dad's trial date was set for 6 months out. The prosecutor warned it would be difficult, that I'd have to testify, relive everything in court, but I wanted to face him, to reclaim my story from his narrative. Mom improved slowly. The sewer slide attempt had damaged her liver, requiring ongoing treatment, but she participated actively in therapy, working to understand how she'd enabled Dad's delusions. Our relationship would never be simple, but it was real. I see you, she said during one session. Eric, my son Eric. School remained a question mark. I'd missed too much to graduate with my class, and my cognitive issues made regular classes challenging. The district offered alternatives, online courses, modified schedules, meals, extended time to complete my degree. Amy helped me navigate the options, patient with my processing delays. The house went up for sale. Neither Mom nor I could return there. Too many ghosts in every room. Aunt Sarah supervised the packing, saving what mattered and donating the rest. She found my old belongings hidden in the basement, photos Dad had cut me from, clothes he'd thrown away, proof of my existence he'd tried to erase. Mrs. Chen organized a neighborhood support network, people who'd witnessed Dad's public performances, who'd felt something was wrong but hadn't known how to help. They shared their observations, adding to the evidence against him. One woman remembered seeing me at the grocery store, how Dad had answered when she'd asked me direct questions. Another recalled the day Dad had introduced me as Theo at the bank, how confused and medicated I'd looked. Small moments that built a larger picture of systematic abuse. The guitar came easier as my hands strengthened. Muscle memory returned in fragments, old songs emerging from the fog of medication and trauma. Amy and I played together in the hospital courtyard, other patients stopping to listen. Dr. Nathans adjusted my legitimate medications, just 2 now, for nerve pain and mild anxiety. Nothing that clouded my thoughts or stole my words. I could think clearly for the first time in months, even with the lingering cognitive issues. Legal documents arrived weekly. Restoration of my identity, reversal of the death certificate, recovery of stolen benefits. Each paper proof that Eric Morrison existed, had always existed, would continue to exist. Dad's family reached out through lawyers, claiming we were being cruel, that grief had driven him to a breakdown, but they hadn't lived it, hadn't been slowly erased and replaced. Their letters went unanswered. Physical milestones accumulated. Walking 10 feet with a cane, standing through an entire shower, climbing 3 stairs without rest. The therapist documented everything, evidence of recovery that felt like rebellion against what Dad had tried to make me. Mom started talking about the future during our sessions, where she might live after discharge, how we might rebuild some kind of relationship. She showed me apartment listings near Aunt Sarah, small but clean spaces where she could start over. I want to be your mother again, she said, if you'll let me, the real you. The prosecutor met with me regularly, preparing for trial. She showed me Dad's journals, his detailed plans to transform me into Theo. The delusion ran deep but calculated, each step deliberate and documented. He knew exactly what he was doing, she said. This wasn't grief, this was control. Amy's parents offered their guest room when I was discharged, but Aunt Sarah had already prepared a space. She'd painted it green, my favorite color, not Theo's. Simple furniture, nothing that carried memories, a blank slate to build from. The discharge date approached with mixed feelings. The hospital had become safe, structured, removed from the chaos Dad had created, but staying meant not moving forward, not reclaiming the life he'd tried to steal. Dr. Nathans created an outpatient plan, continued therapy, regular medication management, ongoing physical rehabilitation, support groups for identity abuse survivors, trauma processing, family reconstruction, a roadmap to becoming myself again. Amy helped pack my few belongings, the clothes Aunt Sarah had bought, get-well cards from classmates, the guitar I was relearning, small proofs of existence that Dad couldn't erase. You're going to be okay, she said, and for the first time, I believed it might be true. The morning of discharge, Mom was wheeled down from the psychiatric ward to say goodbye. She looked healthier, more present, more like the mother I remembered from before Theo died. I'll see you soon, she promised. At therapy, at Aunt Sarah's, wherever you're comfortable. The drive to Aunt Sarah's felt surreal. Familiar streets but different context, heading toward a future Dad hadn't scripted. The rental house was small but bright, adapted for my mobility needs. My room waited, green walls and empty shelves ready to fill with my own choices. That first night, I sat with my guitar in the quiet bedroom. My fingers found chords slowly but surely, muscle memory fighting through residual damage. Not Theo's songs or Dad's demands, my own music, imperfect but real. Amy texted goodnight. Mom called from the hospital. Aunt Sarah checked in twice. Mrs. Chen had left soup in the refrigerator. A network of support that Dad had tried to sever, rebuilt connection by connection. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Continued therapy, legal proceedings, the slow work of reclaiming identity. Dad's trial loomed, his delusions still poisoning every interaction. Recovery wasn't linear or simple, but tonight I was Eric Morrison, damaged but not erased, surviving in a body that was mine, with a name that belonged to me. The performance was over. The real work of living had just begun.